The period between 1945 and 1980 witnessed a profound transformation in the global political landscape as numerous nations in Africa and Asia emerged from centuries of colonial rule to assert their sovereignty and independence. This era of decolonization was shaped by a confluence of internal aspirations for self-determination and external pressures, including the weakening of colonial powers and the ideological competition of the Cold War. Factors driving decolonization. Several factors contributed to the widespread decolonization of Africa and Asia. The aftermath of World War II significantly weakened European colonial powers, both economically and militarily, rendering them less capable of maintaining control over distant colonies. Concurrently, the United States and the Soviet Union, emerging as superpowers, advocated for self-determination and opposed colonialism, aligning with the principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. Additionally, the success of independence movements in Asia, notably India's in 1947, served as a catalyst for similar movements across Africa. Nationalist leaders, often educated in Western institutions, mobilized popular support through political parties, labor unions, and mass protests, challenging colonial authorities and demanding independence. Key events and movements. In Africa, the wave of decolonization gained momentum in the 1950s and 1960s. Ghana's independence in 1957 marked a significant milestone as the first sub-Saharan African country to gain freedom from colonial rule. This success inspired other nations, leading to a series of independence movements across the continent. In Kenya, the Mau Mau Uprising, 1952-1960, against British colonial rule, highlighted the intense struggles faced by colonized peoples. Similarly, in Algeria, the National Liberation Front waged a protracted war against French colonial forces, culminating in Algeria's independence in 1962. Asia experienced its own decolonization processes, often marked by conflict. In Vietnam, the First Indochina War, 1946-1954, between the French and the Viet Minh, led to the division of Vietnam and the eventual withdrawal of French forces. Indonesia's struggle for independence from Dutch colonial rule culminated in 1949, following a brutal conflict. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the end of British and French mandates led to the establishment of independent nations such as Jordan and Syria. Challenges post-independence. Despite the triumph of independence, newly formed nations faced numerous challenges. Artificial colonial borders often grouped diverse ethnic and religious groups, leading to internal conflicts and civil wars. For instance, the partition of India in 1947 resulted in widespread violence and the displacement of millions. In Africa, countries like Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of the Congo experienced ethnic tensions and political instability shortly after gaining independence. Economically, many newly independent nations inherited economies structured to serve colonial interests, focusing on the export of raw materials with limited industrial development. This economic dependency persisted as former colonial powers and international financial institutions continued to exert influence, leading to continued economic challenges and inequality. Cultural and social transformations. Culturally, decolonization sparked a resurgence of indigenous identities and traditions. In literature, art, and education, former colonies sought to reclaim and celebrate their heritage, moving away from colonial narratives. Socially, the period saw efforts to improve literacy rates, expand educational opportunities, and address gender inequalities. However, the legacy of colonialism often hindered these efforts, as many nations struggled with limited resources and infrastructure. International dynamics and the Cold War. The Cold War significantly influenced the decolonization process. Both the United States and the Soviet Union sought to align newly independent nations with their respective ideologies, offering economic and military aid to gain influence. This competition sometimes exacerbated conflicts, as seen in the Korean War and the Vietnam War, where superpower rivalry played a central role. The Bandung Conference of 1955, held in Indonesia, was a pivotal moment in the decolonization movement. It brought together 29 Asian and African nations, representing a significant portion of the world's population, to promote economic and cultural cooperation and to oppose colonialism and neo-colonialism. This conference laid the groundwork for the non-aligned movement, which sought to maintain independence from both Western and Eastern blocs during the Cold War. Legacy of decolonization. The legacy of decolonization is complex and multifaceted. Politically, many nations established democratic institutions, though the stability and effectiveness of these systems varied. Economically, while some countries experienced growth and development, many continued to grapple with poverty and underdevelopment. Socially, the quest for national identity and unity persisted, as nations navigated the challenges of diversity and historical divisions. In conclusion, the period of decolonization between 1945 and 1980 was a transformative era that reshaped the global order. While it marked the end of colonial empires, it also ushered in a new set of challenges for newly independent nations. The struggles and successes of this period continue to influence the political, economic, and social landscapes of Africa and Asia today.